All right, today I'm at the old Interlaken Hall, the Interlaken Historical Society building. They have a museum here. And since I like talking about the history of this town, it only seems right I come in here, right? So we're gonna just walk in, and we have Silent Movie Saturdays, 10 to 2. Now that's cool. Get a drink for $1 and free popcorn. How cool is that?
Hi.
Hi there.
This happens to be Mary Lou Dawson, and she happens to be the historian.
Hi.
Hi there.
Of Interlaken.
My husband and I wrote the book about Interlaken, so you ask me a question and I'll probably be able to answer it.
That is
and
cool.
if I can't, I can call my husband and he can.
Okay, so I'll start right off the bat. Over here used to be Nick's Market in the 70s.
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
believe it was.
In the 80s it was
But
Bravo's.
originally, at the very end of the street was, when we moved here, was the post office.
Right.
It has been torn down. After the post office moved, it became a nursery school, and then it has been torn down. The next building over was built over 100 years ago, and there was a gentleman here named Mr. Nicosia who,
That was Nick from Nick's
yeah,
Market.
that was who Nick was.
Right.
And
I remember him.
He had built the store down the street, and
And didn't you have the laundromat?
Yep, there was a
there?
laundromat right
I
there.
used to come and wash my cars here.
In the 80s that became Bravo's Market.
When
It was-
I moved in '77, so
Right,
I didn't know
so-
that.
there you go.
anyway, the store that is now the one that burned down that you were taking the pictures
Right.
of, was in business for a long, long time. But then when it went out of business, the couple that bought it didn't stay there and keep a business going there. They had musical programs there and did different fun things.
Very
but
cool.
They didn't stay there, and I think one of them has died.
Well, tell
Anyway.
about the museum. That's
Yeah,
what
I
we
mean,
need to talk about.
in the
'cause that's what
museum,
he
so-
wants to tell about.
All right, what do you want to know about the museum?
What's the most interesting thing you have here
Oh my
of
goodness,
Interlaken
it's me.
history? Besides you, of course.
I'll tell you, this building was built many, many years ago
All right.
because the building that was here, which was this building, was not a store. It was built, I mean, it was a store. There was a building here that was a store. And when the building went out of business, the town said, well, this would be a good place to have a town hall. So they went over here and they started doing town business here. Well, not too long after they moved in, by the way, at this time, Interlaken was known because of its fruit trees. This was known as like the orange capital of the world or something.
All right. Well, this was like a
Came
Ritz,
from all
this was
over the place
real
to-
ritzy, wasn't it?
What?
Like real ritzy. Like there was hotels.
There
and-
were a lot of hotels. And I don't know how ritzy it was, but it was definitely a place where wealthy people came
Right.
because they could go fishing, they could go do whatever people did on vacations back
And we had the railroad
Late
track
18.
coming
Right, I remember the
through.
railroad.
and they came on the railroad, and that was what they did. And it became quite a popular place. There were 3 or 4 hotels, all but one has burned down. The one that's still standing is at the end of the street, that big red building. It's not a hotel anymore, of course. Anyway, Interlaken was considered a very popular vacation area.
Right.
And people came from all over the place just to stay in the hotels and go fishing and enjoy the nice weather. But little by little, the hotels burned down, people
Right.
started going further south,
All right.
whatever. And Interlaken became just a nice place to visit if you wanted to, but basically it was just a wonderful place to live.
Right.
And when my husband was getting out of the service back in 1979, we were renting a place in Gainesville because he was going to the University of Florida, to study to be a history teacher, of course.
Right.
And while we were staying there, we saw an ad in the paper, and it said, this 5-bedroom house is for rent for $25,000. And we thought, wow, that's pretty reasonable. So we called and said, what's wrong with this house? And she said, oh, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's in Interlaken. And we said, well, what's the matter with Interlaken? And she said, there's nothing the matter with Interlaken, but this is Gainesville, and that's 25 miles away.
Right.
So my husband and I got in the car and drove over here, and as we drove into town, we just thought, gee, this is really pretty place and a really nice place. I hope the house is nice. And then we got out of the car, and there were people walking, and they said, hello, can we help you? Are you looking for somebody? And everybody was so nice, and I was saying, oh, I hope that I like this house. Anyway, when we walked up to the house, it was a 2-story house, and I thought, wow, this is really nice. I wonder, there must be something wrong with it.
Right.
Well, we met the lady that lived there, and she said, oh, there's nothing wrong with the house. I love it here, but I've lost the use of my leg, and I can't go up and down the stairs anymore, so we're going to buy a 1-story house. We've already bought it, and we've already moved out, but that's why we're selling it. It's not because there's anything wrong with the house.
Right.
Well, anyway, it was love at first sight. My husband
And then
I.
you met Mr.
And then as soon as we moved in, we met our neighbor across the street. Well, it turned out the neighbor across the street was one of the original neighbors, one of the original members of the Interlaken community's daughter.
Right.
Now, the people across the street were the folks that built the brush store. They were the Brushes. But Mrs. Brush's, it was Mrs. Brush's daughter that got to be my friend.
And this is the dollhouse that Mary Lou built.
I met the family,
Uh-huh.
and I got interested in making the dollhouse because it was the brush store. That's the place that burned down, by the way.
Uh-huh.
Anyway,
Oh, that's nice.
So that you can see,
Brushes.
they lived on the top floor, and then they had the general store down below, and people came here for everything. This was, we've got the book that tells you a little bit about what was going on.
Well,
And
I
Mary
made
Lou and her
this
husband
book
built this.
when I was making the store,
Scrapbook, uh-huh.
and I got to be friends with the people that had owned it because they lived across the street from me, and they gave me pictures and information and stuff, and that helped. So whenever their daughters are here visiting, they always come in and get their pictures taken.
I'll be done.
Anyway,
Over here is where we're having the
we're having a
Lincoln
we're
Lane.
trying to raise money to buy the old brush store and get it.
no,
We've
not,
already got it registered and we've already bought it.
not the brush, but the Lincoln
Did I say
Lane.
brush store? I meant black
Yes, the
store.
Lincoln Lane Schoolhouse, which is the one.
Anyway,
the black schoolhouse
So
there. And there's
these are
one
pictures of the students. No, those aren't. Those are.
It was a black schoolhouse, and we're in the process of refurbishing it.
And one of my best friends when I first moved here was Johnny Mae Granger, and she was a black woman who was on. This was in
Is
these
this-
days.
This is over by the high school?
Yep,
It's behind
where the
us.
buses are.
Okay, I know
And
where that
it's
is.
we've already got the historical marker there. The church across the street, which is a little late, they are very ecstatic about helping us
Right.
refurbish it, and the community around there is all excited. We have got the Cotton Club Heritage Museum in Gainesville is interested in helping us.
Which is another black
So
one.
yeah.
Right.
So we have got, that's what we're up to now. Going to level it, paint the inside, put new windows, because the windows have little problems, but try to remain the original character of the school and not really change it much. And use it more as a gathering place for the community, and use the land that's around there for gatherings and picnics and whatever the community would like to use it for.
Oh, that sounds nice.
Yes, and then we have this really neat, Mary Lou can tell you about the printing
It's
press.
kind of funny. When we were given this, the family that gave it to us said that their little girl had been born deaf. And, well, it was their great-grandmother by this time. But anyway, then the little girl was born deaf. And back in those days, they had just started a program pretty much everywhere where if a child was born with a disability, they were allowed to go to a school to learn a skill that they'd be able to use the rest of their life for free. So when this little girl was born, she was born deaf, and her family took her to the school that taught a number of different skills, and one of them was how to do printing. And they said, oh, well, she can't go here. And they said, why not? Because she's a girl. Well, what's that got to do with it? Well, we don't take girls in this school. And
Yeah.
so her family went to the
Times have
authorities
changed.
and changed that. So after that, they did take girls at that school.
right.
And she learned to be a printer, and that's what she did the rest of her life.
Yeah,
and when
cool.
she died, her family gave us this because they thought that was a very good thing. for
We were
people
lucky
that
enough,
learning about
somebody
history
donated
would
some
know
old
about.
fishing lures just recently, which made it kind of, we're starting to get a little bit more things, and we kept, we have collected all sorts of odds and ends and things, and this is really fascinating. Mary Lou can tell you more about
Well,
it.
actually, that was in the lake across the street from where the schools are here in town. And a couple that live across the street, he has since passed away. But anyway, he used to work over at the clinic over here, and he was also a teacher or a person that worked with the schools. His name was Mr. Rude, and Mr. Rude's family called him up one day and said, we just stumbled on this thing in the lake, and they didn't quite know what to do with it, but they finally decided to call somebody that might know what to do with it, and they were absolutely fascinated. They got the people from the University of Florida to come over, and they said, not only is that not junk, but it is a actual canoe that was made by Indians way back
Wow.
when there were Indians living here and nobody else. And somehow it got left in the lake, and it's been laying on the bottom of your lake ever since. Don't throw it away, whatever you do.
All right.
So they really didn't know what to do with it, so they donated it to the Historical Society.
Well, that's very cool. I know when I was a little kid here, I used to find arrowheads and pottery chunks all over the place. So.
So we've
Have you
got
lived here
that.
all your life?
My grandparents lived here in the 70s, and I used to come and visit them in the 70s, and I went to school here one year in the 70s. I stayed with my grandparents, and
Were
then,
you just little at the time?
yeah, real little. And
I was going to say, if you were in middle school, you might have had my husband as a teacher.
well, I would have been in elementary school then, but
Oh, did you go to the Interlaken school here, the old,
The
Yeah.
old one or
315?
the one that they built afterwards?
I'm not sure.
okay. Yeah, I know.
It's the one that's still standing there.
Oh, that's the oldest schoolhouse in the state
That's
of
the
Florida, and
oldest-
it's
Still in
it's
use.
Schoolhouse in the
yeah,
whole
still
state.
used.
Still in use.
Not only the only oldest one here, but it's the oldest one in the state
Yeah.
that's still in being used. Now, there's an old one that's the same age, and it's in St. Augustine,
Right.
but they use that as a gift shop.
Yeah.
So we've got the
Touristy.
honor of having,
The oldest,
Right.
yes.
and I know that because I'm the one that got it and this building and our church all placed on the National Registry of Historic Places.
Now, see, I did know that about that school building, but
Well, those three places are on the historic registry, and they're all here in Interlaken, and I know that because I did it.
so anyway, I have lived here. I moved from Miami with my mom, and we've lived here since 1982. So
And during the 70s, I taught fifth grade one year in the kitchen of the old schoolhouse. At that time, they had also turned it into a book storage place.
Right.
And had 32 desks in there. We didn't move when we got in. And to go to lunch, if it was raining, we had to put a chair down by the window that we could step out of underneath the covering walkway to walk to the high school, to the cafeteria.
Ah, the good old days.
It was wild, but the
Well,
kids
when we
loved
first
it.
moved here, which was 1979, my husband and I were foster parents, and we used to take in lots of little kids. We didn't have any little kids at the time, but we took in little kids. And I got very involved with the dedications and stuff that they were doing because the school was recognized as a historic place. And I got the placard that's put on the door, and I made our little foster children costumes, Victorian costumes, and they won prizes, and their whole family were just thrilled to pieces. And we've got all pictures of all that. And those were nice ways for the town to recognize that they had something special here.
All right.
It is the oldest schoolhouse in the state of Florida.
I do have another question about the history of Interlaken. This road out here by Lake Lagonda, I'd always heard that there was a famous artist that lived over here somewhere.
Could have been.
No.
If you're talking about
It was be right over here, like
the
almost in
man that
walking distance.
designed, you're not talking about the man that designed our town seal, are you?
I
His
always
name
heard he was an
Ellen Vidette,
artist.
I think. And he was supposed to have been an artist, but I really don't know anything about him.
Very cool, because I make videos driving around trying to do my own Interlaken history and from memory,
Yeah,
and there's things I just don't know. And like I said, I only go as far back as the 70s.
yeah.
So,
And this is one of the original council
It
tables.
is the original.
The original, excuse me.
When the town used to meet over at
handmade, March 25th, 1903.
back many years ago,
All right.
the town didn't have the Dickerman building.
Right.
All the town meetings and everything took place in this building. And this table was built to go here. And when they built the Dickerman building and they started having the town, well, they built the Dickerman building as a place for the children to have a good time. It was
Right.
pool tables and all that sort of thing. And the children, they didn't put anybody in charge. They had no adults, they had no supervision, no whatever you usually have when you've got a bunch of kids.